Today, we're going to do a little bit of experimenting and we are going to see what is the best way to prep tofu. So, before you get to marinating or breading or whatever else you would do to finish cooking a dish, right? We always like to prep our tofu in some way. Sometimes people tell you to press it, sometimes people tell you to freeze it, sometimes people tell you to boil it. But which is really the best way? What gives you the best result? And what are the textures like? How do they compare? So, I figured it'd be really fun to just do a whole video just on how we're going to prep a block of tofu. We'll leave one plain, of course, for a control group. I have a frozen one, I have one we're going to boil, and I have one we're going to press. And we will see which yields the best end result. For this video, I'm just going to be using extra firm tofu for all of this. I feel like it is the best baseline tofu to use. And I'm excited. I'm going to have a lot of tofu to eat, which is good for me. And we'll see which way makes the best result or just comparing the results. Let's do it. So we're going to first start off with pressing the tofu. This is a tofu press. So basically we have a little rectangular container here. Then we have a little insert. It has holes on the bottom, and this goes in here. We will put our block of tofu in here in a second. And then there is like a spring system to press the tofu down. This was always the original way that at least I learned to kind of prep tofu, get the excess water out. I have to say I am so lazy and I literally never press my tofu. I never do it, but it is valuable. You can also take a block of tofu and put a heavy pan on top and then put cans in it, and that will also press. But if you have a tofu press, you should use a tofu press. For some methods, I'll use the whole block of tofu, but for other ones, I'm not going to. For this one, I am going to use the whole block of tofu because the tofu does fit perfectly inside the press. Just going to open up my package of tofu, drain the water out. And as a little science experiment, let's see, I'll weigh the tofu right now. And it weighs 483 grams. We'll pop it into the press like so. So see, it just goes in there like that. Every tofu press works a little bit differently, but this has a rectangle piece. So you pop it on top of the block of tofu. So now I got this on. We snap the tops and we just twist it. And you'll start to see that water is coming out right away on the bottom. It starts to drip out right away. So we'll set this to the side and we'll see how it goes. So I've been pressing our tofu for probably about 15 to 20 minutes. And you could see all the water on the bottom there, moving back and forth. I don't like to press it too long. I always get worried the block is going to break because it is a lot of pressure. But I think I would say we're kind of ready to take it out and see what's going on. So we just need to spin the dial on top. Like I said, every single tofu press works a little bit differently. That's how this tofu press works. This one's actually really funny because it gives you like a little stamp on top. So that's all the water that the tofu press pressed out. So after you press the tofu, you could see it is thinner, and definitely when you feel it, it's drier, it's more compact. It actually says Tofu D on there. I don't know if you can see that. It has a little stamp, it does. And I weighed it, and the tofu currently weighs 374 grams. So you could see it presses out a nice amount of water. Our next way that we're going to test is boiling tofu. And I wanted to talk about boiling tofu because I think this is a little bit of a newer thing. I think this is something people don't entirely understand. Like a tofu press makes sense, right? We are just compacting. We're using pressure to just press the tofu down and squeeze out that water. But how does boiling work to enhance the texture of tofu? So first of all, Wendy, the food scientist, explains this much better and more scientifically than I can. So I will link her reel down below in the description box. But basically, through the process of osmosis, which is liquid pushing in and pushing out of the tofu, the water gets pushed out of the tofu in the boiling process with the salted water, and it makes room for things like marinade. It also slightly changes the texture of the tofu. I have boiled tofu before and I really like it. And something else that I think that boiling tofu does that totally makes sense, like we boil pasta in salted water, we'll boil potatoes in salted water, it adds flavor deep within the tofu inherently, right? So it just already starts to infuse it with flavor. I also really want to try boiling it with like a veggie broth or a vegan chicken broth. And I think you could really boil the tofu in so many things if you want to make it tomato-y, add in a little bit of tomato sauce or tomato paste. So I think this is a really great way to infuse the tofu with flavor. So I'm excited to experiment with it more in future recipes, but today we're just going to boil it in salted water. So this works to enhance the overall texture and People say that you don't need to press the tofu because you boiled it. I will say, since I've already done this, I don't find that boiling it totally gives it the same texture as pressing it, but it does help to remove out some of that water in the boiling process, which is crazy, and it adds flavor. So that's how boiling works to improve the texture and taste of tofu. To boil our tofu, I have a pot of water right here. We add in a nice generous amount of salt, and then I'm only going to use half a block because otherwise I'm going to end up with way too much tofu. And we put this in here, and then we bring this over to the stove to boil for about 10 to 15 minutes. Tofu is done being boiled, and it's not going to look very exciting in here. The color of the water actually does change. It's definitely very yellowy now. So, it does change, but overall, the tofu block still looks the same. It's not super exciting to look at. The interesting thing about this is that I find that the tofu is actually softer and sort of like more jiggly. Like to me, this almost looks like not a silken tofu, but it looks like a softer tofu, especially when you're comparing it to the pressed tofu. I mean, a pressed tofu block now looks so firm compared to this, but this is all the same tofu firmness. For our last method that we're going to use, we're going to be using a block of frozen tofu. So I put this in the freezer. This has actually been in the freezer for a long time. And because the date on this is September 13th, I put this in the freezer about a month ago, but it's fine to use. So you freeze it like overnight, and then you put it back in the fridge to thaw it. And yeah, so it's a little hard to maybe see, but this tofu actually has expanded out a little bit. And the reason that freezing and thawing works is because when you freeze the tofu, it's sitting in water, right? So it sucks in all that water and it changes the inside texture of the tofu. And then afterwards, you press it. We have to press this one as well. And we'll be left with this sort of like spongy texture that's more meat-like. It's really good. I've done freezing and thawing tofu before, and I really enjoy it. So it's really interesting to see what freezing the tofu and thawing it does compared to just pressing or boiling it. I think that freezing it definitely changes the inside texture the most. However, the con with this is that you definitely need to pre-plan this out because you can't just like freeze and thaw something very quickly. You need to have the foresight to freeze it, then thaw it, and then be ready to use it, which is honestly why I don't freeze and thaw my tofu more often, because I actually really love the texture that it gives, but just, I mean, who has the time to be like, all right, I have to freeze and thaw my block of tofu. Now, I wanted you to be able to compare what a frozen block of tofu looks like compared to a non-frozen. So this is the frozen, this is the non-frozen. You could see the color gets a little bit darker and the texture looks a little bit different. And this is filled with water. Do you see all that? Do you see all that liquid when I touch it? This is filled with water. This is not totally thawed yet. You can see I gotta let it sit a little bit longer, but it's the amount of water that is in here is like insane. That's why you need to press this. Let's weigh this too. Let's just see. This weighs 456, which actually I'm surprised. I thought it would weigh more, but I also like have been having some water get squeezed out, so it could have weighed more when it initially came out of the freezer. We're gonna do the same thing, popping the press on. In theory, there should be a lot more water that comes out. I don't know. We'll find out together. And now we will remove the frozen tofu from the press. So you can see here's all the liquid. Oh, look, you could see the stamp really good now. I feel like my camera would focus. That's so cute. And there's still so much liquid in there. Even as I'm squeezing it, there's still so much liquid. 378. So pretty similar actually to just pressing a non-frozen block of tofu. And you could see here the thickness of it. But like I said, the color is a little bit different. Like this is just our pressed block right here. And they definitely looked different. All of our tofu is laid out here, and I want you to be able to see everything and compare. So right here is our block of tofu we did nothing to. This is our control. This is our boiled tofu. This is softer, spongier. To me, feels a little bit more, I don't like this word, but gelatinous. This is our pressed tofu. Feels very compact, very, not hard to the touch, but harder than the boiled and harder than the not pressed at all. And the not pressed at all feels firmer than the boiled. Okay. Then over here we have our frozen, which is the most expanded out block. It's the highest one, but it feels a little spongier and a little bit harder. So this is everybody's side profile. This is everybody from the top. And you could just, like I said, you could see some color variation, and I wanted you to see them all next to each other. Let's cook some tofu. So I'm going to cut a piece of each of one of these blocks. We'll prepare it all the same way. That way we can compare. So I'm just going to cut the top portion. And this is the inside of the block of the frozen tofu. And the texture is very different inside. It will feel different. It's like I said, it's spongy. So I'm going to put that slab down. A piece of the pressed tofu. This is very dry inside. It's very, there's not a lot of liquid in there. When I squeeze it, I see a little bit, but nothing crazy. With the boiled tofu, like I said, still just feels very soft, softer than the other guys. Just our plain old tofu. Looks similar to the boiled tofu, but feels harder. But there's liquid in there. There's definitely liquid in there. In terms of cooking this, I'm going to do them pretty simple. Do a little spray oil on everybody. And then I'll just do garlic powder, onion powder, salt, and these will go in the oven at, I think I put it at 425 for, you know, a little bit till everything gets cooked up. And I'm just giving a generous sprinkle. This isn't entirely how obviously I would probably cook tofu. I would either cut it into smaller pieces or maybe thinner cutlets, but I'm just trying to show you comparing the process. And of course, from this point is when you could decide to, you know, marinate it, bread it, whatever you want to do to it. But I'm going to pop these in the oven. The tofu has just been in the oven for 20 minutes. I'm going to give it a flip, and I just wanted you to be able to see the bottom to compare. So this is our control tofu. This is hot. I should be doing this with a fork, but I'm not. It's very white still. It didn't get any crispiness. The boiled tofu got a little bit more browned, as you could see. The pressed tofu got even more browned. So that's the boiled tofu. It's still very soft. Oh my gosh, it's so hot. I should not be doing it this way. And the frozen and thawed tofu kind of looks similar actually to the not pressed. So I'm going to put this back in the oven again just to get the other side kind of cooked up. Our tofu is all done cooking. So again, we have the nothing was done to it control. We have the boiled. We have the pressed, and we have the frozen, thawed, and pressed. So everybody got pretty golden looking and pretty. This control one is still pretty soft. The boiled one, surprisingly, is firmer now. It feels firmer. It almost feels like a little crust on the outside. The pressed one, you could see, not a lot of wiggle room there. And the frozen and thawed, the same. A little bit softer, a little bit squishier, but still not as soft. After all of our beautiful tofu prep, it's finally time to taste it and see which is the best one. First, we'll just take a bite of the control tofu, our tofu with nothing. It's definitely the squishiest, and I think because of doing nothing to it, this is why people are like, oh, tofu is so gross. Like, it's squishy inside, it's white inside. It doesn't, I don't know. There's no inside flavor. The texture on the outside is not great. If you are somebody who is like, I don't understand why I don't like tofu, if you're not doing anything to prep it, it's not going to be that good. Super firm tofu is a little bit different, but an extra firm tofu is not going to be that good. Okay, here is the, I wish the camera would cooperate. Here's the boiled tofu, which looks soft inside, but totally different texture. You get saltiness all the way through, which is nice. So there's already inherently more flavor. And even though when you look at the inside, it doesn't look that different, it feels different. It has a totally different mouthfeel. Now we got the pressed tofu. This is also a little squishy looking inside, but it does look better. There's less water in it. You could definitely see that. And there is kind of like a nice crust on the outside a little bit. Now this tofu has no internal flavor, of course, because we didn't boil it, but the texture is a lot better. It's not as soft. And finally, our frozen and thawed tofu. I feel like I'm having like a tofu flight. And the frozen tofu, totally different texture inside, much chewier, much, I don't want to say spongier because that's not the right word, but chewier, better inside texture. It's not smooth at all. All these other tofus feel smooth inside. The frozen tofu does not feel smooth. So with all that being said, which one do I like better? Frozen tofu. Unfortunately, it sucks because it's such a pain to pre-plan it, but whenever I freeze my tofu, I'm always reminded of why I truly feel it's the best one. What I will say is I do think boiling tofu is a very good runner-up and much more convenient. It's also packing and infusing the tofu with flavor right away. And then pressing the tofu, it makes things like a little bit better, but it's not making anything remarkably better. That's why I feel like for so long I kind of stopped pressing tofu, because I was just kind of like, well, it's not making like that much of a difference in my life. And once I discovered super firm tofu, you don't need to press it. So I just kind of always buy super firm tofu now. And yeah, the control tofu is control tofu. If you are somebody who's like tofu, the texture never feels good, the taste never tastes right, like you need to do something to it. And again, I did a very simple cooking process, just baking it with seasonings. Now, from here, from this point, after you did the prep work, when you marinate it, when you bread it, when you pan fry it, when you deep fry it, when you know, whatever, cover it in sauce, it makes a difference. So the winner for me will always be freezing tofu, because it does make the best inside texture. But for convenience, I think boiling the tofu makes a good close second. And it is a softer texture inside, but there is still something spongy and pressed about it, because if you compare them inside, this is the boiled tofu and then this is the pressed tofu, and they do look pretty similar. So I hope this video was helpful. I feel like I talked a lot, but hopefully I gave some really good insight. I did make a full blog post on this if you're curious and just want to keep reading and learning and talking about tofu and being in the magical world of tofu. You could definitely check it out. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for being here, and I'll see you soon with more videos. Bye.